Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are wrestling with a paradox. A massive, loud, piano-kicking paradox.
Yeah.
We are talking about a man who was synonymous with the birth of rock and roll, a man nicknamed the Killer. But we're also talking about a man who was arguably more tortured by the music he created than anyone else, maybe in the history of the genre.
It's a fascinating tension, isn't it? Usually when we talk about rock and roll rebels, we're talking about people who, they embraced the rebellion. They wanted to tear down the system.
They're leaning into.
They're leaning in hard. They wanted to shock the parents. But the subject of today's dive was a devout man. He was genuinely deeply plagued by the fear, the absolute theological conviction that his own music was a one-way ticket to hell.
It's heavy stuff. We are talking, of course, about Jerry Lee Lewis, and I think what makes this deep dive so compelling is just the sheer altitude of the roller coaster.
Well,
We're talking about a figure who experienced arguably the highest highs in music history, instant worldwide fame, challenging Elvis Presley for the crown, and then the absolute lowest lows. Complete career implosion,
right.
a scandal that would have ended anyone else's career instantly, and tragedy that just reads like a Greek myth. It's relentless.
It is a story of survival, really. I think that's the core theme we found in the source material. We're looking at a man who outlived his contemporaries, outlived multiple wives, outlived his own reputation, and then managed to rebuild it from scratch, not once, but twice.
Exactly. And just to set the stage for you listening, our source material today is the comprehensive biography of Jerry Lee Lewis, and we're pulling from historical accounts, session logs, interviews, all of it.
Yeah, we've got a lot to get through. His music, his 7 marriages, his run-ins with the law, which are legendary, and his multiple musical reinventions.
And our mission here is to move a bit beyond just great balls of fire. We all know the song, we all know the energy, but we want to look at the survival instinct. This was the last surviving member of the $1 Million Quartet.
The last man standing.
We want to understand how he transitioned from being a total pariah in the rock world to a legitimate country music superstar. And we need to answer the question. Was the chaos the fuel for the music, or was the music the only thing holding back the chaos?
That's the central question.
And we have to talk about the piano.
We absolutely have to talk about the piano.
The kicking of the bench, the playing with the feet, the raw, unfiltered nature of it all. So let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning. Where does a character like Jerry Lee Lewis come from? Because sometimes it feels like he just fell out of the sky, fully formed, with a cigar in one hand and a glass of whiskey in the other.
Well, he didn't fall from the sky, but you could say he rose from the mud. To understand the man, you have to understand the soil he grew up on. He was born in 1935 in Faraday, Louisiana. Now, Faraday isn't a metropolis. In the 30s, this was hard country. The source material paints a very specific picture: an impoverished farming family in eastern Louisiana.
So, humble beginnings. Is that fair to say?
Humble is putting it politely. This was subsistence farming. But here is where it gets really interesting and almost unbelievable. If you look at his family tree, it's like a layout for a musical dynasty.
Yeah.
It's almost statistically impossible how much talent was in this one extended family. He grew up playing piano with 2 of his cousins. One was Mickey Gilley.
Wait, the Mickey Dilly, the country star, urban cowboy Mickey Gilley?
The very same. The owner of Gilley's, the world's biggest honky tonk.
Wow, okay. And the other cousin?
The other cousin, Jimmy Swaggart.
No way, the televangelist, the I have sinned Jimmy Swaggart.
Yes. So imagine that living room for a second. You have Jerry Lee Lewis, Mickey Gilley, and Jimmy Swaggart, all kids, all learning to play piano together on the same beat-up instrument.
That is just wild.
It's an incredible concentration of charisma. You have the king of country nightclubs, the king of televangelism, and the killer of rock and roll, all sharing a piano bench.
It explains a lot about the showmanship, doesn't it? Whether you're preaching to save souls or playing rock and roll to, well, corrupt them, you need to command an audience. You need that fire.
Precisely. They're 2 sides of the same coin. The preaching style of the Assembly of God and the performance style of early rock and roll. They share the same DNA. It's about ecstasy. It's about being moved by the Spirit.
Okay.
And a family was dedicated to this talent. His parents, Elmo and Mamie Lewis, they actually mortgaged their farm to buy him a piano.
That's a massive gamble. We're talking about the 1940s. A mortgage on a family farm for a musical instrument. That's like Jack and the Beanstalk levels of rich.
It was. But they heard something. He had this natural affinity. And his musical education was, let's call it eclectic. He was influenced by an older cousin, Carl McFoy, who taught him some of the basics. But the real spice, the thing that made Jerry Lee different from the other kids, came from Haney's big house.
What was Haney's big house? That sounds like a cartoon location.
It was a black juke joint across the tracks. Now remember, this is the segregated South. He couldn't go in. It would have been socially unacceptable and frankly dangerous
Right.
for a young white kid to just waltz into a black club.
Right, of course.
But he would hide in the bushes outside. He would just listen to the sounds coming out of the windows.
And what was he hearing?
He was hearing the blues. He was hearing rhythm and blues. He was hearing a driving, sexual, rhythmic pulse that you just didn't hear in the white country music or the polite gospel of the time. That's where the flavor came from. He took the white country gospel he learned at home and just injected it with the rhythm of the juke joint.
So you've got the church on one side of the tracks and the juke joint on the other.
Right.
That is the central tension of his entire life, right there in the geography of his childhood.
And he started young. His first public performance, his first ever gig, was on November 19th, 1949. He was just a kid.
14 years old.
14. He played with a country and western band at a car dealership in Faraday.
A car dealership, that is.
Oh.
That's almost cinematic in its own way. So American.
It is. They opened the back of a flatbed truck to use as a stage. But apparently, he just stole the show. The highlight was a cover of Drinkin' Wine, Spodio D by Stick McGee.
Wait. He's 14 years old and he's singing a drinking song at a car dealership.
Already leaning into the killer persona, even if he didn't know it yet. But this is where the conflict really kicks in. His mother, Mary Mamie Lewis, she was a devout woman. She saw this talent, but she was terrified of where it was leading.
She saw the juke joint in his playing.
She did. She wanted him to use that talent for the Lord. So she took drastic action. She enrolled him in the Southwest Bible Institute in Waxahachie, Texas.
To become a preacher or a gospel singer.
To sing evangelical songs exclusively, that was the plan. Use the gift for God. But Jerry Lee, well, he couldn't suppress the boogie-woogie. It was just in his hands.
This is the famous expulsion story, right? I feel like every rock star has a kicked out of school story, but this one feels different. It's more profound.
It is different because of the context. He wasn't, smoking in the boys' room. He was expelled for musical blasphemy. He was at a church assembly, supposed to be playing a hymn. The song was, "My God is Real."
A standard reverent hymn.
Yes. But he didn't play it straight. He played a boogie-woogie rendition of it.
In a Bible institute. He syncopated a hymn.
Exactly. He sped it up. He added that driving left-hand rhythm. Perry Green, who was the student body president at the time, said that the dean called Jerry Lee into his office the very next morning and expelled him immediately.
Just for the rhythm. Just for that.
For playing worldly music. That was the term they used. They told him he was washing the Holy Spirit in the gutter. And this moment is just crucial for you to understand. This wasn't just the man trying to keep him down. This established the battlefield inside his own head.
How so?
Well, he respected these people. He believed in their theology. So when they told him this music is of the devil, he didn't think, oh, you guys are just squares.
No, he thought,
you might be right. He loved the music, this driving, rhythmic, exciting sound. But the very institutions he respected told him it was sinful.
that's the tragedy of it. He didn't play it because he was some rebel who didn't care about religion. He played it because he couldn't help himself, but he carried the guilt that he was doing something wrong every single time he hit the keys.
Exactly. He was sinning with every note in his own mind. So, kicked out of Bible school, he goes back to the only place that'll have him, the clubs.
Right.
He starts playing in Faraday and Natchez, Mississippi. He's soaking up the new rock and roll sound. He actually cut a demo in New Orleans in 1952, but nothing really happened with it. The real turning point comes when he decides to make the pilgrimage.
To Memphis.
To Sun Records, to see the wizard, Sam Phillips.
The man who found Elvis. The man who was building this whole new world.
It's November 1956. Lewis travels to Sun Records. And I want to highlight the desperation here. He didn't just hop on a bus. He and his father gathered up all the eggs on their farm, 33 dozen eggs, and sold them to a local market just to pay for the gas to get to Memphis.
33 dozen eggs.
Yeah.
That is such a specific, granular detail that it really paints the picture of their poverty. He literally scraped the farm clean to get a tank of gas.
That's how desperate he was. But here's the thing. After selling the eggs and driving all that way, Sam Phillips wasn't there. He was on vacation in Florida.
Oh, wow. So he drives all that way, sells all the family's eggs, and the guy isn't even in the building. He almost missed his shot entirely.
He might have. But the producer and engineer, Jack Clement, was there. And Clement was skeptical. He told Lewis, We really need another country singer. But Lewis insisted on playing. He basically refused to leave until he was heard.
I love that, the confidence.
He recorded a version of Ray Price's Crazy Arms.
And what did Clement think?
He was impressed enough to play the tape for Sam Phillips when he got back.
Yeah.
And Phillips heard it. He heard the distinctiveness in the piano. He said, "Get that boy back in here." By December, he's recording prolifically. And this leads us to one of the most famous, almost mythological dates in music history, December 4th, 1956.
The $1 Million Quartet. I love this story because it sounds like fan fiction, but it actually happened.
It sounds like a marketing gimmick that someone came up with 40 years later, but it was a complete accident.
So paint the scene for us. Who is in the room? How does this happen?
Okay, so it's a Tuesday. Carl Perkins, who had the massive hit Blue Suede Shoes, is in the studio trying to record some new tracks. He's struggling a bit to find his next hit.
Okay.
Jerry Lee Lewis is there, effectively as a hired gun, a session musician playing piano for Perkins. He's a nobody at this point. Nobody knows who he is.
Okay, so Perkins is the star, Lewis is the help.
Right, and Johnny Cash is there. He had stopped by just to listen, just to hang out. He was already a star on the label, so you've got 3 heavy hitters already in the room. And then the door opens, and in walks Elvis Presley.
Who is, I mean, at this point, in late 56, Elvis is the biggest thing on the planet.
He's huge.
Yeah.
He's already left Sun Records for RCA. He's a movie star. He just dropped by his old stomping grounds for a social visit with a showgirl on his arm.
Wow.
But you put 4 musicians of that caliber in a room, and instruments are going to get picked up. They started an impromptu jam session. And crucially, Sam Phillips had the presence of mind to leave the tape running.
Thank goodness for that. What did they play? Was it all just rock and roll hits?
That's the fascinating part, and this goes right back to our earlier point about the Bible Institute.
Yeah.
Almost half the songs they played were gospel.
Really?
Just a little talk with Jesus, walk that lonesome valley.
So the $1 Million Quartet, these icons of rock rebellion, and they're sitting around singing hymns.
It was the common language they all spoke. But the source notes a really interesting dynamic in the room that day. Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis Presley knew all the words to the more ecstatic Pentecostal numbers because they were both raised in the Assembly of God.
Right.
Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins were Baptists. They were a bit more reserved. They didn't know the shouting songs as well.
The theological divide right there in the studio. Amazing.
Lewis actually said later that Cash and Perkins were deprived because they didn't know the song.
That is hilarious. Only Jerry Lee Lewis, the absolute rookie in the room, the session guy, would have the confidence to call Johnny Cash deprived.
It shows his personality. He wasn't intimidated by Elvis. He wanted to be Elvis. He wanted to beat Elvis. And 1957 gave him the chance. That was the year he strapped himself to a rocket ship.
Whole lot of shaking going on.
It was a big Maybell cover. He took a rhythm and blues song and just injected it with nuclear energy. And then the big one, Great Balls of Fire.
These songs were massive. They defined the era. They felt dangerous.
Worldwide fame, but also immediate backlash. We have to remember the cultural climate of 1957. This wasn't just pop music. This was viewed as a threat. Radio stations boycotted the songs.
Why? What was so threatening?
They were considered sinful. They were too sexual. The breathing, the pacing, the raw energy. It was just too much for mainstream sensibilities.
And here is where we get a window into that internal conflict again. I read in the notes that there is a recording of an argument about this song, an actual recording.
Yes, and it is chilling to listen to. It's a literal recording of a theological argument between Jerry Lee Lewis and Sam Phillips during the session for Great Balls of Fire. The tape was rolling.
What are they arguing about?
Theology. Lewis initially refused to record the song. He thought it was blasphemous. The title, Great Balls of Fire, is a biblical reference from the book of Acts, and using it for a lustful love song felt completely wrong to him.
Wow.
He asked Sam Phillips, "How can the devil save souls? What are you talking about? I have the devil in me."
That is incredible. He's standing on the brink of superstardom. He has a monster hit record in his hands, and he's arguing that he can't record it because he's terrified of hellfire.
And Sam Phillips, who is a genius psychologist as much as a producer, tries to talk him down. He tells him, "You can save souls by making people happy. You can use your talent to lift people up." Phillips is trying to give him a theological loophole to be a rock star.
Did Jerry Lee buy it?
He recorded the song, but I don't think he ever truly bought it. He lived with that cognitive dissonance for his entire life. But once that red light went on, he unleashed. He brought a physicality to the piano that no one had ever seen.
Oh, the pumping piano.
He didn't just play it, he attacked it. You have to visualize this. A piano is a stationary instrument. You sit at it, it's polite. Jerry Lee Lewis treated it like a wild animal he was trying to wrestle to the ground.
Yeah.
He pounded the keys with his heel. He played standing up. He raked his hands up and down the keys in those famous glissandos.
Yeah.
And, of course, the bench kick.
Was that planned? Was it choreography?
He told the Pop Chronicles that the first time he kicked the bench over, it was a total accident.
Yeah.
He was just moving so violently that he knocked it back. But the crowd went wild. They loved the aggression of it. So he kept it. He made it a signature move.
If it works, it works.
And then came the Steve Allen Show in July 1957. That was the moment he demonstrated these moves to a national television audience. Up until then, people had mostly just heard him on the radio. Seeing him, it was a revelation.
Right.
Cub Coda called him rock and roll's first great wild man. Elvis shook his hips, but Jerry Lee looked like he was going to burn the entire building down.
He was legitimately rivaling Elvis. In 1957, it was a toss-up, who is the king? Jerry Lee was on top of the world. He was making thousands of dollars a night. He was unstoppable. And then 1958 happened.
The crash. The fall from grace.
Let's talk about the UK tour, because this is a cautionary tale for the ages.
It's May 1958. Lewis arrives in London. He's ready to conquer Europe. He brings his entourage. And crucially, he brings his new wife.
Now, usually bringing your wife on tour isn't a PR disaster.
Usually not.
Yeah.
But there was a reporter at Heathrow Airport named Ray Berry. He was the only journalist there. He sees a very young girl with Jerry Lee and asks, "Who is this?"
And Jerry Lee, being Jerry Lee, doesn't lie. He's not subtle.
No. He says, "This is my wife, Myra."
And Ray Berry starts digging.
And the revelations that came out of this were,
Well,
though they were career-ending, it was a trifecta of scandal that the British press and then the American press absolutely devoured.
let's break down the facts that came out, one by one.
Okay, fact one. Myra Gale Brown was his cousin. His first cousin once removed. Now, in the rural South at the time, this wasn't unheard of, but in London, in 1958, it was shocking.
Okay, that's strike one, a big one.
Fact two, she was 13 years old.
13.
Lewis told the press she was 15. He lied about her age. But the press found the birth certificate. She was 13, he was 22.
That's a hard stop for people, even back then. I think sometimes people assume, oh, it's the 50s, things were different. But 22 and 13, that was not acceptable.
No. It was considered cradle snatching. The British press called him a monster. They called for him to be deported. The headlines were brutal.
And there was a third fact, right? Just to add fuel to the fire.
Fact three. He hadn't finalized his divorce from his second wife, Jane Mitchum, before marrying Myra. So technically, he was a bigamist.
So the trifecta: incest, pedophilia by modern standards, and bigamy all at once.
It caused an absolute uproar. He tried to play his first concert and the audience booed him off the stage. They threw things at him. The tour was canceled after only 3 concerts. He was basically chased out of the country.
And he probably thought, okay, the British are uptight, I'll go back to America where they love me.
That's what you'd think, right?
You'd think so. But the news had crossed the Atlantic. When he landed back in New York, the scandal was waiting for him. The reception was ice cold, and the industry reaction was swift and brutal.
How brutal.
Radio playlists dropped him instantly. Dick Clark dropped him from American Bandstand. His fee plummeted.
What does that look like for an artist? I mean, practically speaking. It looks like complete financial ruin. He went from playing arenas and making $10,000 a night, which is like $100,000 today, to playing dive bars and juke joints for maybe $250 a night, if he was lucky.
Oh.
He went from being Elvis's only real rival to a pariah in a matter of weeks. The fall was that fast and that hard.
That is a staggering fall. Most people would have quit. Most people would have changed their name and become a plumber.
Most people would have. But Lewis had this grit, this refusal to accept defeat. He entered what we now call the wilderness years. His contract with Sun ended in 1963, and he moved to Smash Records. But nothing was working.
Why not?
He was trying to record rock songs, but the world had moved on. The Beatles had arrived. The British invasion was happening. Jerry Lee Lewis looked like a relic of a scandalous past. No one wanted to touch him.
So he's a relic of the 50s, disgraced, playing small clubs where fights break out. It sounds miserable.
It was. But this period, this desperate, angry period, produced one of the most legendary albums in rock history. Live at the Star Club, Hamburg, recorded in 1964.
I've heard about this. It's legendary for being raw.
Raw is an understatement. It is feral. It's unhinged.
Yeah.
He was backed by a British band called the Nashville Teens, and critics regard it as one of the wildest, greatest live rock albums ever recorded, period.
Why? What makes it so special compared to his studio hits?
It's the aggression. I have to imagine. He's angry. He's got nothing left to lose. He's playing to a crowd in Hamburg. the same city where the Beatles cut their teeth, and he just unleashes this torrent of sound. The recording quality isn't pristine, it's loud, it's distorted, but that adds to it.
It captures the energy.
It does. Milo Miles, writing for Rolling Stone, had the best description of it. He said, "It is not an album, it's a crime scene."
A crime scene. That is quite a review.
He said Jerry Lee Lewis slaughters his rivals in a 13-song set that feels like one long convulsion.
That is so evocative. It sounds like he was trying to destroy the piano and the audience simultaneously.
He was. If you listen to it, he plays the songs faster than ever before. He's shouting, he's badgering the audience between songs. It proved that even if his fame was gone, his talent hadn't diminished one bit. In fact, the anger might have made it sharper. He was proving he was still the killer.
But critical acclaim for a live album doesn't pay the bills if radio won't play you. He needed a change, a real change in strategy.
Which brings us to the pivot, the Great Reinvention. By 1968, he'd been in the wilderness for a decade, a full decade. A promotions manager named Eddie Kilroy pitched a radical idea.
Yeah.
Stop trying to be a rock and roller. The world doesn't want a 33-year-old wild man anymore. Cut a pure country record.
Now, Lewis had country roots, obviously. Crazy Arms was his first recording at Sun.
Right, but he was the killer. He was the rock guy. Going country felt like a defeat to him initially. It felt like admitting he was old, that he'd lost.
But he was broke.
He was broke, so he agreed. He recorded a song called Another Place, Another Time. It shot to number 4 on the country charts. It was a smash hit. And suddenly, Jerry Lee Lewis was back. But he was a different Jerry Lee Lewis.
How so? What was different about it?
The voice changed. In the 50s, he was shouting, "Great balls of fire!" It's all upper register, pure energy. In the late 60s country records, he's crooning. He's using this rich, lower register baritone. He sounds weary. He sounds like a man who's lived through a scandal.
Right.
And the country audience loved it.
They love a redemption story, or at least they love a tragedy they can dance to.
Exactly. And this wasn't just a one-hit wonder situation. This was a dynasty. Between 1968 and 1977, he had 17 top 10 country hits.
17? Wow.
Songs like What's Made Milwaukee Famous Has Made a Loser Out of Me, Me and Bobby McGee, To Make Love Sweeter for You.
I love that title. What's Made Milwaukee Famous Has Made a Loser Out of Me. It's the quintessential country drinking song.
It is. And the production was key. It wasn't that slick, polished Nashville sound with the string sections and the background choirs that was popular at the time.
No, it was grittier.
It was what they called hard country.
What does hard country mean in this context?
It means sparse. Just a fiddle, a steel guitar, and that piano, front and center. It was called hard, not because it rocked, but because the emotions were hard. Rick Bragg, his biographer, noted that it was substantial music. It was heavy. Critics started comparing him to George Jones and Merle Haggard, the serious vocalists of country music.
So he proved he could be a serious vocalist, not just a piano-smashing showman. He had a second act that was arguably more successful, at least chart-wise, than his first act.
Statistically, yes. He had way more hits as a country artist, but the wild man was still in there. You can't just turn that off.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about his appearance at the Grand Ole Opry in 1973.
The Opry.
Yeah.
The mother church of country music. Very strict, very traditional. They have rules.
They have lots of rules. And he had always been ambivalent about Lewis. He didn't fit the family values vibe.
Yep.
He was a drinker, a pill popper, a scandalous figure. But he was having so many hits, they had to book him. Now, usually when you play the Opry, you get 2 songs, maybe 8 minutes of stage time. They run a tight ship because it's a live radio broadcast. Commercial breaks are sacred.
I have a feeling Jerry Lee didn't care about commercial breaks.
He played for 40 minutes.
No way! On a live radio show, he just kept going.
He just hijacked the show. The stage manager was frantically signaling him to stop from the wings, and he just ignored them. He played his new country hits, but then he said, "I'm the killer, and I'm going to play rock and roll." And he blasted through a whole lot of shaking and Great Balls of Fire.
Wow.
He desecrated the temple of country music with rock and roll. The crowd went nuts.
That is incredible. He couldn't resist.
And in a really touching moment amidst all that rebellion, he invited Del Wood out on stage to sing with him. She was an Opry member, a piano player. She's the only person at the Opry who had been nice to him when he was a teenager trying to break in years before.
That's a nice bit of loyalty. But also a massive middle finger to everyone else who snubbed him. I'm going to do what I want, and I'm going to honor the one person who is decent to me.
It sums him up perfectly. He demands respect. But while his career was soaring again in the 70s, his personal life was, well, turbulent is putting it mildly. It was a horror movie.
Yeah, reading through the source material, the list of tragedies is just relentless. It stops being scandalous and starts being heartbreaking and just dark.
It really is.
Yeah.
We mentioned he was married 7 times, but the loss he endured is hard to comprehend. Let's just list it. His son, Steve Allen Lewis, drowned in a swimming pool at age 3.
God, that alone, that breaks a person.
His other son, Jerry Lee Lewis Jr., played drums for him in his band. He died at 19 in a Jeep accident.
So he loses 2 sons. Both of his sons.
Both of them. Then his 4th wife, Jaren Pate, drowned in a swimming pool right before their divorce was finalized. His 5th wife, Shawn Stevens, died of a methadone overdose just 77 days after they got married.
It's like a curse. I mean, people started whispering that, right? That the killer nickname was some kind of curse.
It certainly felt that way. There was a cloud of death around him. And the divorce from Myra Gale Brown, the cousin he married, the one who caused the initial scandal, that happened in 1970. And it was ugly.
What came out in the divorce?
She cited adultery and, quote, every type of physical and mental abuse imaginable. She said she had been subject to a reign of terror.
So behind the hits, behind the comeback, there was just this domestic chaos.
And financial chaos. The IRS came after him hard. He wasn't paying his taxes. In 1979, they raided his home. They seized his property for a tax debt of $274,000.
What did they take?
Everything. They took his cars, his motorcycles, his jewelry, his musical instruments. They put a for sale sign on his life. He eventually filed for bankruptcy in 1988 with $3 million in debt.
And amid all this chaos, the deaths, the divorce, the IRS, the behavior becomes more erratic, the pill usage amps up. And there are guns, lots of guns.
He loved guns. And he was incredibly careless with them. There was the incident in 1976 with his bass player, Butch Owens.
This is the one where he shoots him?
Accidentally. Lewis is in his bedroom. He's holding a .357 Magnum. He decides he wants to shoot a Coke bottle across the room.
In the bedroom. As a party trick.
In the bedroom. He fires. The bullet ricochets off the bottle or the wall and hits his bassist, Butch Owens, in the chest.
Did he survive?
Miraculously, yes. Owens survived, but it just shows the level of recklessness. He was living in a reality where firing a Magnum in a bedroom was a reasonable activity.
But the most famous incident, the one that has become absolute folklore, is the trip to Graceland. If you know one story about Jerry Lee Lewis, it's this one.
November 23, 1976. This is the collision of the two kings. It's legendary.
Take us through it, step by step, because the details matter so much.
Okay, so the premise, according to Lewis, was that Elvis had been calling him. Elvis was reclusive by this point, locked away in Graceland. But Lewis claimed Elvis wanted him to come out to the house to talk.
Okay, so in his mind, he thinks he's invited.
Lewis is at a nightclub in Memphis called The Vapors. He's drinking champagne, he's popping pills, he's a mess. And someone gives him a gun, a Derringer.
As you do. Here's a gun, Jerry.
Exactly.
Huh?
So at 3 a.m., he decides it's time to go see Elvis. He gets in his Lincoln Continental. And he puts the gun, a loaded pistol, on the dashboard.
Why on the dashboard?
So he wouldn't be charged with concealing it. In his mind, that was the legal loophole. If it's visible, it's legal. Incredible logic.
He's a legal scholar.
So he gets to the famous musical gates of Graceland. He pulls up. He has a bottle of champagne under his arm. He tries to throw the bottle out the window, and this is a detail I love because it shows how out of it he was. The window was rolled up.
Oh, no.
He smashed his own car window with the champagne bottle, glass everywhere. And then, frustrated, he smashed the car into the Graceland gates.
He rams the gates of Graceland.
He rams the gates. The guards come out, obviously. Jerry Lee is waving the gun, waving the champagne bottle, yelling, "Where's Elvis? Tell him the killer is here."
What happens next? Does Elvis come down? Does he let him in?
Elvis was watching the whole thing on his CCTV monitors. He saw the entire spectacle unfold. And this is the sad part, the tragic part. Elvis didn't come down. He didn't invite his old friend and rival in.
What did he do?
He told the guards to call the police. He reportedly said, "Lock him up."
Wow. That must have stung.
It hurt Lewis deeply. He later said, "To be scared of me was ridiculous." He felt betrayed. He thought they were peers, brothers in arms from the Sundays. But Elvis saw a maniac at the gate.
Right.
The police arrived, found the gun, and arrested Jerry Lee Lewis for carrying a pistol and public drunkenness.
And the mugshot from that night is legendary. He looks strangely happy, smirking.
He looks defiant. But the coda to this story is that Elvis died just 9 months later.
They never spoke again.
They never spoke again. It's a tragic end to that relationship. The two kings of rock and roll, one trapped behind a gate, the other in handcuffs outside it. both prisoners of their own fame in different ways.
It really is Shakespearean. So we move into the later years. You'd think with the bankruptcy, the arrests, the health issues, he'd just fade away. But he didn't.
The survival instinct again. It's incredible. In 1986, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is established. And who is in the inaugural class?
Jerry Lee Lewis. Has to be.
Along with Elvis, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, the Architects, he was undeniably one of them. And true to form, at the ceremony, he started an unplanned jam session. He couldn't help himself.
He also had that movie come out, Great Balls of Fire.
1989. Dennis Quaid played him. It was a glossy Hollywood biopic, but it did something really important and reintroduced his music and his story to a whole new generation.
Right.
And Lewis re-recorded all his classic songs for the soundtrack because he didn't trust Dennis Quaid to sing them properly.
Smart move. His versions are definitive.
It brought him back into the public eye in a big way, and he kept recording. He didn't stop. Last Man Standing came out in 2006.
That title wasn't subtle.
It was accurate. By 2006, Carl Perkins was gone. Johnny Cash was gone. Roy Orbison was gone. Elvis was long gone. Jerry Lee was the last one left. And the album was his best-selling release in decades. Sold over 1 million copies.
And who was on it?
It featured a who's who of rock elite, Springsteen, Jagger, Clapton, Neil Young, all coming to pay the ring to play with the master.
It was basically the music world acknowledging that he was the last connection to the Big Bang of rock and roll.
Exactly. And finally, after years of being snubbed, he got into the Country Music Hall of Fame, too.
Just recently, right? Very late in life.
In 2022, just a few months before he died.
What was his reaction to that? After being the wild man for so long, did he care about the establishment honoring him?
He did. He was humble. He said he was overwhelmed. And he said something really interesting. He said his career taught him to be a good person and treat people right.
Which is an interesting takeaway, given the life he led.
Yeah.
Given the shootings and the scandals and the abuse allegations.
It is. Maybe it was a wish more than a summary. Maybe it was what he hoped he had learned by the end.
He faced health issues at the end.
He suffered a major stroke in 2019, which finally slowed him down. He couldn't play the piano the same way anymore. And he passed away on October 28, 2022 in Nesbitt, Mississippi. He was 87 years old.
Which, frankly, is a medical miracle given his lifestyle.
It defies all logic. I think Keith Richards looks at Jerry Lee Lewis and says, how did he do it?
And in a moment of full circle that you couldn't script, who officiated the funeral?
His cousin, Jimmy Swaggart, the televangelist. They started on that piano bench together as impoverished kids in the 1940s, and Swaggart was there at the very end to send him off. The preacher and the killer finally reunited.
Wow. So let's try to synthesize all of this. We've covered the hits, the scandals, the theology, the tragedies. What is the legacy here?
It's massive. It's the awards for Grammys, Rock Hall of Fame, Country Hall of Fame, Memphis Music Hall of Fame. But it's more than the awards. He was the bridge. He connected the sacred and the profane. He took the energy of the gospel tent and brought it into the bar room. He connected country and rock in a way that was violent and beautiful.
And that quote from Robert Christgau really sticks with me.
His absolute confidence in the face of the void made Jerry Lee the quintessential rock and roller.
Confidence in the face of the void. That is powerful.
It's the perfect description. He stared into the void, whether it was poverty or scandal or grief or his own genuine fear of hell, and he didn't blink. He just played louder. He kicked the bench over and kept on playing.
It raises a provocative thought for us to leave you with. We often romanticize the tortured artist, but when you look at a life this tumultuous, the guns, the 7 marriages, the sheer chaos, we have to ask, was that chaos the fuel that made the music so exciting? Did he need to be on the edge to play like that?
Right.
Or was the music the only thing that kept the chaos from consuming him entirely?
Was he the killer because of the music, or did he need the music to survive being the killer?
That's something to chew on. And if you haven't, go listen to Live at the Star Club. Hear the crime scene for yourself. It is an education.
It's worth a listen. Absolutely.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.